And good afternoon, alienated parents, grandparents, alienated children worldwide. Welcome to Let's Talk on Parental Alienation. And today's topic we have disability rights with Joan Kloth-Zanard, all the way from California, right, Joan?
Nope, Connecticut. I'm
Oh,
on your side.
Connecticut. That's right. My apologies. Joan works with the Alienated Study Group. I belong to it too. It's a great group to be. It's a nonprofit group that helps alienated parents and grandparents, not only in the U.S. but here in Canada. Joan has helped me a lot over the years. Joan is also the executive director at Parent Alienation Support and Intervention, and that's out of Southbury, Connecticut as well, right?
Yes. Well, PASG is an organization that I belong to.
Okay.
PASG is my nonprofit that I run and have been doing for decades.
Oh,
We're
okay.
the first where supposedly I was told I'm the oldest 501c3 for
Wow.
parental alienation. And I also am temporarily running the PA Consortium, which is a umbrella, if you will, organization for all the organizations that deal with some level of parental alienation, custodial interference, shared parenting, and so forth.
Oh, right on. Well, okay. So since 1996, founder Joan Kloth-Zanard recognized the trauma that parent and children were experiencing due to high conflict divorce and parent alienation. A need existed for prevention and intervention and support groups online to help prevent and intervene in situations of parental alienation. After years of research, study, and education and experience, Parental Alienation Study Support and Intervention PAS was created. Parental Alienation Support and Intervention, PASI, is an international nonprofit organization for the prevention and intervention of parental alienation, a form of abuse that destroys parent child relationships. Welcome to Let's Talk, Joan Kloth-Zanard. My name is Mary Kovacs here on Let's Talk. I am an alienated mom headed into being an alienated grandmother. So I'm here to help everybody over 18 years now. And I'm so grateful I found you, oh God, years ago. And I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot, and become the podcaster for one of the most needed topics right now because our children are so damaged, suffering with all kinds of disabilities now.
And
So,
that's the topic of our discussion today.
yes. So, thank you.
I'm also an expert in the ADA. I'm not going to tell you I'm perfect at everything. That's just not possible. The laws change, things grow and change, but it is one of my expertise.
Yes. You
Unfortunately,
educate.
when we're dealing with parental alienation, it is a form of psychological abuse and domestic violence, which causes complex PTSD, stress, and anxiety, not only in the targeted parent, but in the children. And in fact, even the alienator has issues with this from their family of origin. It's actually why the alienator does what they do. But the problem we want to talk about today is the court's lack of proper protection of the disabled parents and children's rights in the family court. The problem we want to talk about today is
Whoops. My apologies.
that's okay. So one of the things that I started to look into was to make some phone calls to some of these agencies that handle disabled. One of them is a company called the Data.net, or data.org probably. At any rate, when I got somebody on the phone, they admitted to me that this is a epidemic with the courts not being properly trained, despite federal law that as of 1997, any federal and state agencies with more than 50 employees had to be in compliance. They're supposed to reevaluate every 3 years. This is not being done. We're finding that I have clients who put in for special ADA accommodations, and this is supposed to be protected paperwork. It is not allowed to be added to the docket. It is not allowed to be brought up and exposed in the open courtroom. It is look at it as being a medical document and protected by HIPAA. But on top of being protected by HIPAA, it's protected by ADA rights, which are federal rights.
Who is HIPAA?
HIPAA is the health, your health organization that, and I forgot what it stands for, but it's about your privacy, protecting your privacy of your medical information.
All right.
So when somebody puts in what we call an ADA accommodation request, technically, the judge is not supposed to know any of the contents of that other than what the request has been and been made. There are certain requests, yes, that have to go before the judge, but most should not. For example, if a client's asking for a copy of the transcripts, both written and audio, that does not need to go to the judge. That has the other side, it will not affect them.
Okay.
If they ask for extra time to respond or a 5-minute break, technically, it really should not be proposed to the court and given to the judge to make a decision on, because this is a medical need. And the amount of consequences as to how this would harm the other side really is not enough to warrant denial of this very needed accommodation. Most parents have such severe PTSD, stress, and anxiety that if something is said, they will also often get triggered, go into an anxiety attack, panic attack. I've had clients have to leave to go to the emergency room because they've got chest pain, or they have to run to the bathroom because they're about to vomit. This is an anxiety response. It's a panic attack. They need to be able to have time, be able to say to the judge, I need a 5-minute break. I need to go collect myself, so that they can go back, calm themselves down, pull out their paperwork, remind themselves of what they're there to talk about, so that they don't keep ending up on the defensive. They need to find a way to be able to present their case and be on an offensive position. Unfortunately, the family courts are not allowing this. They continue to keep the disabled in a defensive mode, and this is just further triggering of their disabilities.
And I'm one of them. They wheelchaired me down the court aisles, and the judge didn't care.
First of all, you should have been entitled. First of all, under the ADA, it was clearly apparent you were disabled. You were in a wheelchair. Yes. They should have been asking you, what other accommodations do you need? Do you need an ADA advocate? Do you need extra time? They should have been on top of this themselves, especially realizing that you were clearly disabled in a wheelchair. The way the definition of disability goes is there are 3 possible ways you can qualify. It's not an and, it's an or. In other words, 1, you could be getting SSDI or Social Security Disability Income and be labeled as disabled under the federal government. 2, you could have the appearance of being, 2, you could have been disabled in the past, but that disability is been addressed for work. Let's say you've got accommodations in various places to accommodate your disability. So you were disabled.
Yes.
3, the third option is that you have the appearance of being disabled. So being in a wheelchair clearly is an appearance of being disabled.
Absolutely.
Needing a sign language interpreter is clearly a sign of being disabled. Even though they can't see that you're deaf, the request in and of itself means you're disabled. Having the person break down in tears, having panic attacks, becoming highly agitated. that's a clear sign that there's an issue, that you
Mhm.
may have a disability. So how does this play out in our family courts? Well, part of the problem is it's not. A parent who comes in there and has no clue they have a right to ask for ADA accommodations because of this, and here's the key. This is a situational condition that would not exist if the the condition or the issue did not exist. In other words, if there had been no divorce, this
Would never happen.
right, we wouldn't have the appearance of being disabled. We
Right.
wouldn't have the disability. Basically, it's caused by legal abuse syndrome,
Absolutely.
which is a diagnosis in the DSM and the ICD. It is very prevalent in high conflict custody divorces, where the other side continually uses the legal system to abuse the other person.
18
And
years for me.
yep, and this is why when we say appear that you had a disability, you could have been, let's say we're going outside of the family court. Now, let's say we're in court for something else and you're asking for ADA accommodations. You qualify because previously, under your divorce, you were disabled from legal abuse syndrome and qualified. Now that that's over, that disability may not, that particular situation might not exist, but you were disabled at one point in time due to those type of triggers. So why are we having this discussion? Because I really need parents to be aware you have rights. But our problem is we're having a hard time getting those rights properly recognized and adjudicated in the family courts in particular. I've seen it happen also in criminal court, where a person's ADA rights are violated. Prime example is a case wherein the person is being charged with a criminal offense and they are legally disabled. The crime didn't happen the way it happened, the way it is being portrayed, because their disabilities were used against them to charge them for a criminal act that didn't happen. The judge is now aware that the person has ADA accommodations on the record. They have asked to be able to have an ADA advocate with them, which is one of the things that parents can ask for, is they can have somebody sitting there at the table to help them. Please remind me to talk about that, okay, Mary? About an ADA
Yeah.
advocate.
I want to say I was just in a court proceeding. I was assaulted in May, and the court just granted the sentencing to 12-month peace bond
For
you
who?
know, for the person that assaulted me. That's all he got. And the judge,
Because
or
it was
the
probably a
crown.
first-time offense.
Well, no, it really wasn't. But they weren't bringing in any history into the courtroom this time. And the thing was, the judge or the crown left out the fact that I was a disabled woman.
Right, but because that should have been brought up, that this person took advantage of somebody who was disabled, that
Senior.
this is a federal and a state violation, and I can rattle those off. Let me just finish this story.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this person has an attorney, but is finding out that the attorney is not working for them. They fire the attorney 3 times and attempt to put themselves on pro se, or in addition to this attorney. The attorney also attempts to withdraw 3 times. 2 different judges deny the removal of this attorney, refuse to respond to this person's request to be pro bono or to be an adjunct to their attorney, but provide no reason. Let me explain where we have a constitutional violation here. The first one is this person, no matter who they are, under the United States Constitution, has a legal right to self-represent. Number 2, the judge cannot refuse to remove an attorney without having an evidentiary hearing in which they determine the person is not competent to self-represent. This person never had an evidentiary hearing. So what this means the judge is doing is that they're deciding that this person is incompetent and incapable of self-representing themselves or even assisting their attorney in representing themselves. That is a constitutional violation. The judge is neither a medical professional to make that determination, nor was there an evidentiary hearing proving such. This is a prime example of a poorly trained staff in the judicial arena not recognizing, one, a constitutional right they violated, two, an ADA right they violated by falsely refusing to remove that attorney, not once, but 6 times. That judge violated that person's ADA rights and constitutional rights because without valid evidence, they're stating that this person is not competent, and they have no valid evidence to show that they're not competent. So this is important for you to understand because this is an example of judiciary not being properly trained. So now I'm going to move on to that comment I made about an ADA advocate.
Okay.
This is a very important person to have on your side. It could be a friend, it could be a professional, but somebody that you trust who sits with you at the table and they help to keep you organized. They help you to find your paperwork. They can indicate to the judge when they feel you need a break. And you actually can have a motion or an accommodation rather requested that when you're having trouble speaking and getting your point across, that the ADA advocate can speak for you. This is a very important piece because it is one of the things that clients get stuck on. They get such anxiety and they start to stumble. They can't get the words out in a succinct way to get their point across.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes another person who can put it into terms appropriately for them. I
just want to say that they allow that when you're doing your government taxes, and if you can't speak to them, you can get someone to speak on your behalf.
Yes,
so that's why it's important to know that you could do that in court as well.
Anybody who wants it, there is no licensure or certification to be an ADA advocate.
No.
None. No federal or state licensure. But what I will tell you is that I would strongly suggest that anybody who wants to do this, do some quick free courses online. Get some certification so you understand, because reality is you actually could be somebody who's an ADA advocate can actually charge $50 to $100 an hour to be sitting there and advocating and helping somebody in a court. So this is another way for somebody to also make a little extra money, and also and especially somebody who may be disabled. If it's not their case, it's not as much of a trigger for them.
Right.
So they might be more of a calm voice in the storm.
And it's nice to have that kind of support. I know when I went through my trial, I had the domestic violence team help sit there with me, and I mean, they didn't have to do anything. Yeah, they were wonderful.
And to be honest, it could be a divorce, a domestic violence advocate. You just having an advocate there with you sometimes is enough, because they keep you organized, they help you find papers, and if necessary, they can speak for you. But you must ask for that accommodation to allow them to assist you to present your case, because you get tongue-tied from the trauma, and it's part of your disability.
Yeah.
Now, there are special ways to fill out these accommodation forms, because you do not, hear me loud and clear, do not put your diagnosis on there. All that needs to go on there is how your disability affects you and what accommodations you need to deal with the disability. So, for example, somebody who's deaf is going to want a sign language interpreter. Somebody who's blind is going to need Braille. Somebody who's got severe PTSD, stress, and anxiety is going to definitely need extra breaks so that they can calm down, and be able to come back in and present their side of things. There are other things I want people to be able to know that they can ask for also. Not only can you ask for an ADA advocate, a copy of the transcripts, both written and audio. You can ask for extra time to respond. You can ask for as many 5-minute breaks, for 5-minute breaks as needed. You can ask, to be able to sit and stand. Because for me, for example, I can't stand for long periods. I can't sit for long periods. I have to sit and stand. You can ask for any other accommodation. Maybe it's you need to be able to suck on a lollipop or snap a rubber band on your wrist. Whatever it is that you use to deal with your anxiety or your disabilities, you have a right to ask for those accommodations. So long as they don't impede with the procedures and policies and cost more than $1 million to activate, they must accept them. Yes, there are some requests, like I said, that because the request could affect the other side, such as asking for a continuance because of a disability, the judge might have to notify the other side of that motion for continuance based on your disabilities.
Right. Yeah, we went through that the other day as well. I had another trial to deal with landlord and tenant stuff, and one of the tenants, it was a class action. One of the tenants took mental health issues all of a sudden, and the judge didn't understand until that moment. His paralegal had to explain that when you have an impairment, a mental impairment, it's not always there. It happens through stress, tiredness, and this gentleman sat there for 4 hours already. And then when it came to questioning, he broke, like limp.
He broke down. He
Yeah.
literally broke down.
So
I had a client have this happen.
So let me just finish that. The judge allowed him to take time off, and now we come back in 3 to 4 months. So he's going to do the trial in increments.
Yep.
To support a disabled man. Yeah.
That's an accommodation, and this is good.
Yes.
Because it means this
I was
judge
shocked.
is properly trained and educated
Yes.
to recognize when somebody has a mental health condition. It's not like sitting in a wheelchair. This affects their ability to communicate. And if they can't effectively communicate, how are they effectively going to have a fair and reasonable hearing? They can't.
They can't. And to mention that it was
a level.
Yeah, but to mention though, there was a class action, so there was like 30 something other people that depended on him. So it would have been a domino effect, knocking everybody out.
Right. But I will also tell you that probably 50% of the rest of those people all have PTSD, stress, and anxiety just from this case alone. And they were probably thankful to have the 3-month reprieve on this so that they could formally get all their stuff together.
Yeah. Well, we can't get anything else together because it ended 4 hours later.
It's comfortable.
So now we get
maybe have an ADA advocate with them.
Yes, that's right. Because the judge did say we could bring whoever we want as long as they don't talk out of turn, and that was fair. So people, because we're all seniors, seniors. We need support.
In fact, the ADA used to be Americans Disability Act. In 2016, it became, and then it was amended again in 2018. It became the Americans Disability Act Amended Act because it now included mental health conditions.
Yes.
Previously, we did mental and
psychological.
No, education. Intellectual.
Intellectual, right? Yeah.
It didn't include this prior, so now that's been added in. And speaking of intellectual disabilities, I have a client out of Tennessee who has ADD, ADHD. She's had it since she was 7 years old. She is legally disabled.
Mm-hmm.
When you have ADD, ADHD, and you tack on PTSD, stress, and anxiety, it exasperates your condition.
Yes.
In fact, quite often, children are misdiagnosed as having ADD, ADHD because PTSD, stress, and anxiety look like ADD, ADHD. Doesn't mean that means that either way they're still disabled. Well, this judge in this case mocked the client on the record, stated that everybody's got ADD, ADHD, that she's not really disabled, and that she's going to make her pay child support. The woman has no job. Her ex-husband, or her husband, he's still her husband, destroyed her business, took all the marital assets and put them in his account, isn't giving her money to care for the kids, deliberately rescinded her medical insurance is gone, her auto insurance is gone, she's got bupkis. He took everything away. They're still married. Illegal. And the judge refused to, she hasn't even been able to get this to the judge to address this.
Wow.
And the judge is pushing a totally other agenda about her having to take care of her own medical and her own this. And she's got no money, no job, and she's disabled, and the judge isn't listening. Well, this triggered my client to have severe chest pains, and she had to go to the emergency room, and the judge didn't give a shit. And we've been pushing to her to get a domestic violence advocate. DV agencies were ignoring her. Finally, she ended up, her son had been abused by the father in this case. And she didn't want to bring it up. She just needed the child's injury to be addressed because she already knew what would happen. If she had tried to file domestic violence charges, there's just too many charges being filed for domestic violence that nobody wants to listen to them.
Right.
Because there's too many false allegations. It's gumming the works up for true abuse victims. And I blame this on the domestic violence agents, rights groups, right, because they promote false allegations.
They make them up. They make the kids
not only do the attorneys promote.
Yes.
They think this is the way to get control of the case by making false allegations because it stalls everything.
And that's what happened to me.
Brings this child to the doctors to get treated. And the child blurts out how it happened. What the hell happened? Well, the doctor's a mandated reporter. He has to call DCF or domestic violence. Now domestic violence has been assigned, or DCF, somebody's been assigned to check in on this. Because financial abuse is a form of domestic violence. So when he took all the marital assets and put them in his own personal account, that's financial abuse. She has no money for gas. She's crawling the floor looking for pennies and dimes and nickels and quarters just to put a little bit of gas in the car. She's driving with no auto insurance because he canceled it, and she's got no medical insurance because he canceled it. This is all abuse of the disabled because she's legally disabled, and she couldn't even go to her medical appointments because she had no medical insurance to pay for them. That's abuse. And the fact that this judge never let her get her story on the record, never let her get it out there that he was doing financial abuse and medical abuse is a serious problem. Forget about the abuse to the children. You know, at least if she had some financial help and medical help, she would have had a counselor to bounce things off of who could have helped her. So this is important because parents need to recognize when their rights, especially if they've got PTSD, stress, and anxiety, and legal abuse syndrome, are being violated by a court.
Yes.
They need to make sure they put it on the record, because now I'm going to start rattling off citations. Under the federal government, we have ADA laws under US 42.1983. That's specific to the American disability. You also have other laws under the ADA, which are federal laws, that are titled ADA Title 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There might be a sixth, which is miscellaneous, or 7 that's miscellaneous. The most important ones are 1, 2, and 3. The other ones pertain to airlines, communications, and some other miscellaneous. 1 has to do with employment. 2 has to do with any federal or state offices. 3 has to do with private public industry. So these are very important because these are laws that protect our rights to be treated fairly and equally. The only way I can find to level the playing field for parents often is for them to be applying for these ADA accommodations to make sure their voices are heard. One of the biggest mistakes I see parents make is the other side's filed the motion. They go first and they're rattling on for 20 minutes. Well, now my parent is in trigger mode, PTSD, anxiety, and they're in defense mode, and all they're doing is defending what's best instead of taking a look at their opening statement and reading their opening statement and then addressing and defending. This is why I tell clients, as soon as the other side's gone, you need to ask for a break so you can go back outside, calm yourself down, prioritize and organize so that you're not on the defensive, but on the offensive.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's important. That is.
Also, there's such a thing known as a limited scope attorney. In this case, and what it means is it's an attorney who doesn't handle the case in totality. Maybe they only write the documents, help you write the documents up, and you present your case. Or maybe you write all the documents up and they just come to court on that day and help you present your case. Or there's some other combination thereof. But this is another way that could possibly help the disabled to get some legal help if they have a little bit of money to at least put toward a limited scope attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Not many people know this exists, but it is another option out there. And especially for somebody who's disabled, who is living on a very low fixed income. You're limited. And of course, we can always ask for legal fees. But I think the point of this conversation is really for parents to realize, one, that they may qualify as legally disabled with a situational condition caused by legal abuse syndrome. And 2, that they have a right to ask for accommodations. And 3, that they have a right to have those accommodations provided and not stomped all over. Mm-hmm. They also have a right to privacy to what their disabilities are in a public court hearing, in a family court. The other side should not be weighing in as to whether the accommodation should be allowed or not. That's totally illegal. And a judge shouldn't even be presenting it to the other side as such. But I can't tell you how many times judges have done this. They say to the other side, oh, well, the plaintiff or the defendant's asking for such and such accommodation. What do you think of that? No, Your Honor, you can't do that. They don't have a say in the other person's medical needs. And you, Your Honor, don't have a say in the other person's medical needs. The only thing you have a say in is this going to majorly affect the policies and procedures that are set in place for a fair and equitable trial or hearing?
Right.
That's it. You cannot adjudicate on a medical condition or a medical need. You don't have a doctorate. You don't even have a master's in it. Now, of course, there might be a judge out there who's got both a legal degree and a PhD in medicine somewhere, but that is a rarity, and I would imagine that particular judge would know better.
Didn't Broadbent, whatever his name was, wasn't he a doctor and a lawyer? Betty
Desmanos Lerandos is both an attorney and a doctor. Yes, and he's retired. I'm not sure I'm saying your name right, Desmana.
Can't
If
say it.
Fernandos is the last name, and the first name is harder for me. Demonstris.
Something like that. Yeah.
And we call him Demas.
Yeah. He had both, right?
But he wasn't a judge. He's just an attorney.
No, he was, just an attorney.
There are very few judges, if any, that are dual degreed in medical and law.
Right.
I would say 0.01%. Which is, look, that's not their job. They shouldn't be a mental health medical professional if they're a lawyer. That's two major degrees you have to go and train for. And their job as a judge is legal, not medical.
Right.
The minute a judge makes a medical decision for somebody about what they need and don't need, they have actually crossed over the line. They are performing a job that they are not licensed to do.
Right. Right. Exactly.
That they have no degree in. That they don't have a legal standing to make.
Mm-hmm. And that brings me
that case that I was telling you about with the judge. Two judges decided they weren't going to let the client get rid of their bad attorney. Now, the reason this client had wanted to get rid of their attorney is, one, he lost evidence. No, let's start from the beginning. One, he failed to follow proper protocol and procedure on this particular criminal offense and contact the appropriate agency for a hearing. He then lost evidence. Evidence became compromised because it wasn't looked at. He never viewed any of the evidence that was submitted that actually refuted the criminal charges. In fact, some of the evidence submitted was submitted by the prosecutor that actually proved the defendant was innocent, and he never looked at it. He did nothing. And he also ignored all of the defendant's requests for body cams off of the people, and so on. The defendant notified the judge of all these issues, including that she had to file a grievance. And the judge ignored all of this and decided that they were not going to let her represent. These judges made a medical decision that this person was incompetent by refusing to allow her to self-represent or be an adjunct to her original attorney.
Right.
That's very sad.
It is sad.
Because most people would not know that they had those rights. In fact, it took a while to put this together to realize what the violations were.
Right. I had a lawyer just before my trial got disbarred because he was filing late. He was drinking and giving drugs to the clients. He was verbally abusive over the phone, and he was just horrible. Anyways, he got disbarred, and
as he should.
And yes, but it left me scrambling for a lawyer because they wouldn't let me self-represent myself. So I had to get a lawyer.
Why wouldn't? What was the reasoning? See, this was what happened with this other person. They never got a reason.
I never got a reason.
That's also illegal. They have to provide you a valid reason on which to deny, so that you can be able to object or appeal, and you can't appeal something that you don't have, that you don't know what the grounds are for.
Well, that's it. And
that's an uneven, unlevel playing field.
Right.
Abuse of the disabled as well as abuse of the defendant or the person.
It was. And the judge literally stated before we walked into the courtroom to start the trial that we were going to be charged, one of us, $175,000 if we lost. So we better have a representative. That's how it started.
Yep, Mary, this is a very sad state of affairs.
Yeah.
Our family courts need to be fixed.
Yes.
The court system, period. The case I'm talking about is one that's not even in family courts, in criminal court.
Well, this one was criminal, civil. They brought me back as criminal, civil, and family after 18 years.
But Mary, this is because the courts don't want to spend the time properly educating their staff.
That they don't.
And the judges don't care. They don't want, as far as they're concerned, we don't need to know anything about the ADA. Well, no, yes, you do.
We need everything. Yeah, we need to know everything. It's important
Because
to educate.
otherwise, you can't possibly fairly adjudicate on a case when you're denying a client their needs as a disabled person so that they can properly represent themselves in court.
That's right.
And when you talk about somebody who has no money and you're demanding that they have to hire an attorney, hello, how is that even okay? I've got cases where the judge says you will not be allowed back in this courtroom unless you have an attorney. And the person is zero income. So how are they supposed to hire an attorney?
Exactly. The judge shut my account down. They froze it. Took my house. Out of that house, they took a lien and paid the court fees because I was left on the streets. I lived in a shelter while my ex-husband lived in a $500,000 home, healthy.
No, because your ex-husband had the money to influence the courts.
Yes.
And that right there is abuse of the disabled.
Absolutely.
Use of the system to be able to use your financial means to gain over somebody who is is not only disabled, but financially disabled. This should never, ever be happening. If one side has an attorney, the other side, if they can't afford one, should be given an attorney for free. I'm sorry. No, this is not okay.
It's not. And this is what's happening.
If given an attorney, they should have the right to be able to also be able to assist the attorney in asking questions as well.
Right.
In court.
And what they're doing too is when you walk in self-representing yourself, these judges turn down on you. They belittle you and they say, well, you're going to lose anyways because this one's got a lawyer. I mean, this is why we need cameras in court, because to see this kind of bullying around, making you feel this little because you are there.
Well, they don't want cameras in those courtrooms because the pattern of behavior of the adversarial process will become public info, and they can't handle that. As far as I'm concerned, no charges or allegations of abuse or neglect should be in family court. They belong in the appropriate court of criminal civil court.
Yes.
Family court is not able to adjudicate on a criminal civil matter. They're family. Okay, that requires a whole different ball of wax on top of the fact a person being charged with a civil criminal act needs to be able to get a pro bono attorney if they can't afford an attorney, and you can't get a pro bono attorney in family court. You can only get that in civil criminal court. Mm-hmm. Two, as far as I'm concerned, okay, maybe some financial stuff, if you're mediating out a parenting plan and a financial divorce, okay, that could stay in family court. But as far as I'm concerned, family court should be all about mediate. There should be 12 attempts at mediation at minimum, because this is a skill that most parents don't have. They need to accept whether the other person is an abuser or not, they're still going to have to co-parent. Yes. Because that person is still a biological part of the children. Yes. So you need to learn how to co-parent and work with each other. Mm-hmm. People change. Situations change. Somebody who may have smacked a kid 2 years ago is reformed and now knows that was an inappropriate behavior and has never done that again. Parents are not perfect. We make freaking mistakes. No, I'm not saying causing a kid to get, to break a leg or get killed is okay. What I'm telling you is shit fucking, excuse my language, folks. Stuff happens.
It does.
Just not perfect. That's why we're called human beings.
That's right. There's no parenting. There's no parenting groups before you have children. They're not going to tell you.
That, if there was such a thing as a perfect parent, we wouldn't need all the self-help resources. We'd have one. It's called the perfect parent.
Yes.
It doesn't exist.
No.
If you go back to the 1950s when they had the book out, How to Be a Perfect Wife or something like that. OMG.
I
Is
know.
all I can say, because it
Yes,
isn't
ma'am.
even it
Yes, ma'am.
isn't even realistic.
It's not. You
So,
know, bow down and curtsy. That's what they wanted. But
but
you
it's
know what? We don't
no,
do it.
no. So just like that is inappropriate, the expectation that a parent is perfect
Yes.
is inappropriate.
It's very sad. Yes.
And unfortunately, whether the parents like it or not, they're gonna have to learn how to co-parent.
Mhm.
Because at some point the kids age out and you're still got a biological connection. There's still going to be maybe a wedding, a college graduation, an award ceremony. Who knows what it is? You're still going to need to be able to co-parent and tolerate each other.
Right. And I lost all that for 18 years.
Yep.
Graduations, you
My
know,
husband has not seen his children since 1996. They, to this day, still believe that he abused them, that we tried to take them from their mother, that we called DCF on them to get them taken from their mother, etc., etc. That's not what happened at
right.
all.
And the same with
And
mine.
we're talking kids who are now in their mid-30s who
Yeah.
still believe this. My husband, so you think about it, that's 1996, and we're in 2023.
My kids are 36, 35, and 33,
Yep. And that's the same ages as these kids.
you know, and
And they
it's so bad. So mentally, it's
well,
psychologically
this
twisted.
and that's the other thing. My husband's kids are son, a middle son, absolutely has a mental health issue.
My
His
middle daughter.
executive functioning skills are so delayed, Mary, and
Mhm.
and or maybe even almost non-existent. He cannot critically think.
No.
Several years ago, a close friend of ours died of cancer. He happened to be a musician. His son had a band. In the band were several brass instruments, one of which was a saxophone. I went to the memorial service, and thank God my husband did not go. He hadn't felt well that day. I'm at the service, and the band's getting ready to play, and I'm see this sax player up there, and I'm going, God, he looks kind of familiar, but I'm not sure. Could that be my stepson? I haven't seen this kid since 1996, and here we are, 2021. Yeah, it was like 2021, 2022, and nobody knows who he is. So I walk up to a widow, and I ask her. She turns around, turns back to me, and as she's saying, "No, I don't," I'll find out this kid jumps off the stage, runs full force at me with all his might, shoves me to the ground on top of other patrons in the audience in front of the widow and her son. This is inappropriate behavior for a 33-year-old man.
Mhm.
But this is how delayed his executive functioning skills are. He
Exactly.
couldn't critically think that this was not the time and place. Could I have gone after him, called the police? Of course I could have. That's not going to fix his problem.
No.
He got kicked out. He was told he will play the one set and he needs to go. And that's what happened. Now, did that make him wake up? Oh, I'm sure not. I'm sure he went home, told his mother what happened. His mother said, "Good for you for pushing her."
Disrespectful. They're very disrespectful. And they think they can rule the parent now. This is what, they think they're
They
above and all.
okay, so this is
Only
a
be
Salvador Minuchin theory. And Salvador Minuchin would teach parents that you need to stop your child sitting on your shoulders and they're dictating everything. That
Mhm.
child needs to get off of your shoulders. You need to be the one.
Yes.
You need to be the one who's dictating and controlling. Not saying you don't listen, but the child should not be deciding everything and who's doing what and when and how he or she is doing it. They are, first
Exactly.
of all, not old enough. Second of all, the human brain does not stop growing till age 25, does not stop maturing to age 35. And I can't reiterate this enough for people. It is why our own federal governments do not allow children to vote till they're 18.
Mhm.
Drink or smoke till they're 21 or rent a car till they're 25. Because based on scientific statistical data and
Cognitive
research,
thinking.
For centuries, we know the human brain is not ready for those kinds of responsibilities, which is
Right.
then how in the bleep, bleep, bleep are we allowing kids to make gender decisions,
Yes.
have body parts cut off before they're 18?
They don't know nothing. They haven't gone through puberty
Even
enough.
19, they're still not, brain is not mature enough.
Well, that's it. Their
But,
hormones.
right. So look, you can't stop a 19-year-old, but God forbid, come on, 18 and under, look, let the child play it out, but you don't go through the surgical and medical procedures. I'm sorry. No, 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 no. This child, because some of these kids, for example, all of a sudden decide, oh no, I don't want to be that. Now they've taken the hormones, cut off their breasts, have a penis they don't want. Well, they have
Then
to go
what?
hormones, it'll shrink, but they're not getting the boobies back without
No,
implant.
it's sad. It's very sad.
Yep. Which is why I get concerned, because these kids do not have the emotional mental maturity to also make a decision so momentous as to whose home they're going to live in,
That's
whether
right.
they're going to have a relationship with the other parent. You know, we have intact families that have domestic violence in them. It doesn't mean they're getting divorced. They go to counseling.
Mm-hmm.
They go to anger management. The children go to counseling to know how to handle and what to do in an emergency situation, or just to how to you know, let the parent know that they're going off track.
Right.
Because let's be real, it's not going to be the first time they run into an aggressive person.
No.
You're going to still need to learn how to handle an aggressive person, whether it's in the home, at a job, or at a bar,
Right.
or on a college campus. This is a skill, because we have so much PTSD, stress, and anxiety, and anger and rage in this world. This is a skill that we all need. Even I need it, because I get frustrated. I get
Right.
agitated.
We need to learn how to handle it better, you know? And I took my kids to therapy before I got divorced because they were missing their father. So I would get them help, get them involved in the community. But when the father came back, he used it as an excuse that I was messing up their brains by taking them to a therapist.
Yeah, my
And
husband, yeah.
when I asked for a divorce, what did he say? Well, we can go to a therapist. And after 25 years, well, why didn't you go with us as a family unit so we could all do it, but by the time I did go to therapy, it only lasted 3 months. He convinced the therapist that he was the therapist couldn't deal with him. He was so
Okay,
grandiose.
so you understand,
Yeah.
narcissists cannot go to therapy
No, I
because
highly
it means they're
recommend
not
not to.
No, no, it means they're not perfect. Narcissists are raised to believe they have to be perfect, because if they're not perfect, then they're not lovable. If they're not
That's
lovable,
right.
then they're abandoned. If they're abandoned, then they're alone. This terrifies them. So they
100%.
cannot go to therapy. The only reason they go to therapy is for exactly what your ex did,
To shut
to
up.
prove that they're perfect.
Yeah. And to shut you up. But
No, it's not just to shut you up. It's to prove to the therapist that they are
oh,
perfect. They don't care. You
that
can
they
keep
are,
going.
yeah, that we are the problem. And what had happened after the third, when the therapist told us to reveal what we didn't like about each other, I said what I said. That night, it was it. It was
Okay,
finished.
so
I
here's
went to
where the
jail.
therapist made the mistake.
Yeah.
The therapist shouldn't ask you what you don't like. The therapist should have said, tell me something positive about your ex.
Yes.
You obviously married him for some reason. There was something that you were attracted to. Tell us about that. You want to start on a positive spin, not a negative spin. That was the therapist's fault.
That was, yes. That was it. That just blew his mind. And
Yeah, because automatically you're already attacking.
right.
No, tell him about the good things he does. Let him tell you about the good things you do. These good things also need to be expressed to the children, so the children know that you guys both have very good positive attributes.
Right. Right.
That is where the therapists make the mistake, and using traditional family therapy instead of systems family therapy.
Right.
And the other one, Oh, my brain just went on fart mode. But there's two types of family therapy that you can do. Structural family therapy.
Structural, yeah.
Okay. This is where these therapists make the mistake. They aren't properly trained in how to deal with a narcissistic personality problem.
Right.
They're not trained in how to properly handle where there is this kind of high conflict. And they keep, the other big issue is that they keep identifying the wrong patient. The children are not the patient. In fact, if the parents were in therapy, the children wouldn't need damn therapy.
No.
Okay? They keep identifying the wrong patient. And when they identify the wrong patient, you can't get anywhere. It's kind of like what happened to my daughter's biological father. He was very good looking, funny, a phenomenal electrician, but he was not a good drinker. He got extremely jealous and extremely aggressive, and it would last through to the next day. So, when they were treating him, he was a hardcore alcoholic. But what would happen is he would get arrested. Instead of putting him in a mental health hospital, they put him in jail. Well, jail's not going to help him.
No.
And they would put him in a rehab. Okay. And in the rehab, they would treat the symptom, the substance abuse, not the cause.
Mm-hmm.
The cause was probably him being manic depressive from the family of origin issues that he witnessed as a child. And so, because they kept treating the symptom and not the problem, he ultimately died of a drug overdose. Yep, my daughter never got to meet her father. And I think she would have loved him. He was very good looking. He was funny. But he was also very violent because of the substance abuse. And the substance abuse wasn't going to stop because he was
Medicating.
He had a comorbidity of diagnosis. Now, we know more about comorbidity of diagnosis today, but it's still not being properly treated.
It's not. And I also lived with an alcoholic and steroid user, buff, had to be top notch, everything perfect. And it was one of the hardest things to deal with, to be
Yes.
with an alcoholic when you didn't drink. I wasn't a holy, roller, but I knew my values, and I couldn't start a family with him. I didn't want to have kids
Well,
for
first of all,
7
he was
years.
on steroids. You definitely didn't want to have family with him, and he probably wouldn't have been able to because he testicularly probably couldn't.
Well, he ended up with testicular cancer, so he ended up losing them.
See?
Yeah,
And that's probably from the steroids.
it
So
had to have been.
but I want to bring up something else here. And this is important because many parents become workaholics or alcoholics or substance abusers to deal with the pain of not having their kids in their lives. And then they go straight. They finally get their, excuse my language, folks, their shit together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They finally realize that this isn't helping them, it's making worse. Guess what? They're considered legally disabled if they stay sober and do not substance abuse. They are quantified as legally disabled because they have a medical illness that causes them a problem. It's like having an allergy to strawberries. They're allergic to alcohol. And this illness causes a inappropriate response mechanism. If they're not drinking and they're sober, that response mechanism doesn't occur. If they drink and they're abusing substances, it does occur. Therefore, if they stay sober, they quantify as disabled, and that diagnosis cannot be used against them so long as they stay sober.
Wow.
Because it's like saying somebody who has I'm trying to think of something as cancer and it's now in remission. I can't tell you how many parents have lost custody because they have cancer. What?
What?
How does that quantify to lose custody? If anything, it
Exactly.
should be the reverse. You should have more time with your kids because you may not live long enough to spend as much time with these kids.
That's right. And let them die in dignity, you know, with love, with
Well,
care,
here's
tenderness.
how it goes. I have clients who've had cancer. They've gone through the chemo. They're in remission, and they're still being denied their 50-50 custody because they try to use the cancer as an excuse. You can't do that. It is abuse of the disabled. It's discrimination under US 42.1983 of the United States Constitution.
Mm.
You can't do that.
You can't do that. You know, when I
And
went,
here's the other one. How many of our military personnel come back with PTSD, yet still have custody of their kids?
yes.
But if they go through a divorce, all of a sudden, they're no longer mentis competent because they got PTSD. If
Mm.
every single member, and that's why you cannot use a person's disability, a PTSD, stress, anxiety against them as an excuse to remove custody, because it is discrimination against the disabled, because all other intact families where there is PTSD, stress, and anxiety are not having their children taken away from them.
Yeah. Joan, we're past the hour. We'll end in like 10 minutes if we can. What do you suggest now for parents that are disabled to do, and use the tool?
Make use of this to level the playing field.
Yeah.
One, if they have they should be seeing a therapist to get a proper diagnosis as to their mental health conditions from this divorce. Do they have legal abuse syndrome? Is it complicated? Is it causing PTSD, stress, and anxiety? Great. Now you got a diagnosis. Okay? You do not have to be getting SSI or SSDI. You just have to have a diagnosis. Okay? Think about it. There are people out there who have full-time jobs who are in wheelchairs. Clearly they're disabled, but they clearly have a job.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you have PTSD, stress, and anxiety doesn't mean you can't be a good parent.
That's right.
Okay?
That is so right.
So you need to be aware of what your diagnoses are. You need to be aware of what quantifies as for an ADA accommodation. You need to know what ADA accommodations you need. You can always amend and add more accommodations. If you need help with this, you can always reach out to me. I have a file of some 20 to 21 documents that explain various things, give you laws, tell you how to find your state law, mock letters for therapists so they have an idea of what is appropriate to put in a letter to the ADA, court ADA. You can ask for this. They also need to know how to fill out that form properly. I strongly advise, find an ADA advocate, even if it's a best friend. Maybe take the class together online. I believe it's ADATA, ADATA. It's either .net or .org. I don't want to look it up right now. And they can go out there and go under resources into online classes and take all those classes. They're quick classes.
Good.
There's like 7, 8 of them, 10 of them, whatever it is. Quick, short, 1 hour little classes and get their certification. And now they can also understand for housing issues, for employment, for air travel, train travel, communication, whatever. And it's a good thing to know.
That's good to know. Yes.
Yep. So that's another thing that they can do for themselves. And they also need to be able to be aware to recognize it in other people.
Right.
So they know when that person's triggered and it's either time to take a step back, to say, hey, let's take a 5-minute break. Hey, I need a 5-minute break. And really important to recognize your triggers. Trust me, I get triggered.
Oh, for sure. We all do.
And there are times I don't even realize I'm being triggered because it's a stupid trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's has to do with my wanting to make sure things are corrected and right so people aren't getting harmed. And I get frustrated. And I'll get triggered for that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, it's really just understand your ADA rights. Understand your ADA rights. Understand the historical of it. I mean, the ADA has been around since the 1990s, in 1995, there were formal, or 96, there were formal procedures put into place that had to be enacted by 1997. Most companies did not do that. Most state agencies did not do that. And that's what we're seeing in the family courts right now, is a lack of compliance with the federal laws.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Joan,
that corrected as well. And I'd like to see our judges better educated to recognize that one of the parties is struggling because of legal abuse syndrome, PTSD, stress, anxiety, or because they have an underlying mental health or intellectual disability such as ADD, ADHD, which is being compromised.
Right. Right. I mean, I still get triggered. I look normal. I have my disability.
So everybody understands, when it's a mental health condition or something that cannot be actually seen by just looking at you, it's called a hidden disability.
Right.
Intellectual disabilities are hidden disabilities. Being deaf is a hidden disability. Having PTSD, stress, anxiety are hidden until triggered. You can't look at somebody and say, oh, they've got PTSD.
Right.
You don't know that. ADD, ADHD. You can't look at somebody and know.
You can't see it. You can't see it.
It's not like seeing somebody in a wheelchair or seeing somebody who's blind and they have a walking stick or a walking dog. No, those are visible. Or missing a leg. That's a visible.
Right. Well, Joan, last words to parents out there.
Know your rights. Protect your rights. And if you're not sure about your rights and you can't find the information on the internet, reach out to me. I'll try and help you.
Where can we reach you?
But I am an expert in the ADA, and I will give you what I can on the ADA. I will try to help you if it's an ADA issue.
Okay. And where can we reach you, Joan?
At info@advocate4families.com or at advocate4fam @gmail.com.
Okay. Can you email me that so I can put it into the feed there?
Yes, I will.
There's a lot for me to remember. But thank you so much, Joan, and we'd love to have you back again soon, and you could update us on more information out there on parents' rights and children's rights and all that. So parents, alienated children, alienated grandparents, anybody out there who's dealing with parental alienation and is disabled and you need help, just reach out here and we can get you connected with Joan Kloth-Zanard, and I tell you, you won't regret it, because Joan is one of the most wonderful people that I know that will help you no matter what. So thank you again. And on Sunday, the 21st, we have Patricia Boone that will be joining us. So this should be good too at 7 p.m. This is amazing how we can get great supporters like Joan and everybody else out here. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Ciao.
Bye.